Okay, so thanks for joining us today. We're going to run through Primavera P6, and I'm going to show you the EPPM piece, so what we would call P6 Web. I'm Nicole Jardin. I'm joining you today from Calgary, and I'm the founder and CEO of Emerald. So after I graduated engineering school many years ago, I worked in claims and disputes, and then I moved into trying to help people roll out their systems better. So that included at the time P3, I think, contract management expedition. So been many years working in project management. So let's touch on some common struggles that people have, and let's talk about why P6 Web versus P6 Client. Okay, so I will touch on both. So most of our clients still, I feel, use the client. Generally, I would say if you have small projects, web is very good. There's a lot of nice features in the web. A lot of our clients still have very large projects. That's where I would say that P6 Client just is a little bit easier to work with. Now, if you're collaborating with different locations, different maybe partners, perhaps engineering companies, so on, it can be pretty handy to use the web because you don't have to deploy any software on anyone's machines. So collaborating across different locations can really be quite handy. Particularly if you just want to share a small portion of the project, things of that nature, works really well. So those are some sweet spots. Now, some of the things in the web, and I'm going to show you the web, I'm not just going to talk to a PowerPoint, I will actually show it to you, are also kind of handy because we've got a lot of nice graphics in the web. And some of our clients use those graphics, or we're also seeing quite a few companies deploy our P6 reporter out to a different reporting tool, Power BI or Tableau, SAP, Fusion, those other sort of corporate graphic tools that you may already have. So let's talk about teamwork. Okay, so the key thing here with P6 is you're trying to model all the different areas, responsibilities that you need addressed on your projects. That's the key thing. We're trying to get people at the right place at the right time so that our project gets delivered efficiently. That's the whole objective. That's what we're trying to do with these tools. So I'm going to show you how you can create projects, how you can work with multiple projects. So in terms of the features being multi-user, multi-project, it's the same, whether it's in the web or in the cloud. So you don't lose anything from that angle using the web. And the back end, the database is the same. So we're accessing the same database, whether you're accessing using the web portal or whether you use client. Okay, so those are things to keep in mind. Now, I'm going to ask a quick question just to see, and if you prefer not to answer, that's all right. Just trying to gauge how folks that are attending right now, whether you use P6 Client, Microsoft Project, P6 Web, Excel, or brand new to tools. Just kind of curious as to the audience attending right now. So if you put that in, it's helpful, and I can share for those who responded. Okay, so it looks like we have a little bit of a mixed bag, which is perfectly fine. Okay, just curious. It's always good to know sort of who's attending and what to focus on. Okay, so let me go ahead and jump in to how it works. So I mentioned the multi-user, I mentioned the multi-project. We have the ability to have portfolios, so I'll show you that in the web. And portfolios can be shared to different users. So you can create them and then share them to different users. And as I mentioned, it's a single database in the back end being shared for the different user base. Okay. Okay, so I think that gives a good idea of the tool and some of the basics. So let me actually jump in and get into showing you the software. Okay, so let me just go ahead and share my screen. And you should see P6 Web, and I can actually make that a little bit bigger so you can see it a bit better. There you go. Okay, so this is P6 Web. Now, for those of you who use P6, you're quite a few are based on the responses. We've got a mixed group, but this is the client, P6 client. Okay, so that's what quite a few of you may be used to using. So this is P6 Web. So you would access it via a URL, and you would access it with the same login. So the security profiles are all administered inside of P6 in the web. So there is quite a bit of the administration of the system, of the central database that is done through P6 in the web. Now, we have a few different portals that you can access, different components that you can access. Now, depending on your security, you may or may not see all of them, okay? So I will spend most of my time in the project one, but let me touch on a few of these others just to explain to you what's available in there, because it may be something your team can take advantage of. So first, we have dashboards. So I can have multiple dashboards available. So I can manage dashboards. I can create different ones with these different windows or portlets inside of them. Those dashboards can access different portfolios. Okay, so the portfolios are managed over here. You can create them, and then you can see different workspaces with those portfolios. So in terms of a workspace, we have a variety of things available to us, and I've tried to kind of give you an overview here. So we have some statistics. So it gives us a layout. For those of you that use P6, the concept of a layout or a view is also in the web, as well as in the client. And we can create different layouts here with different data points. Okay, so this is a mixed bag of out-of-the-box fields, baseline fields, project level fields, and some user-defined fields. So I threw some of our QA symbols in there. So you can see you can have visual cues. You can have different data elements with variants, etc. in here, okay? And this allows you to actually hyperlink into a project if you want. You can click on these and you can actually navigate to the projects and see more details about a given project, okay? So that's how those work. Now, there are some out-of-the-box portlets as well that have information in it. So if I'm a user and I'm assigned to specific projects, either as a resource or as a project owner or responsible for a project, I can have a list of projects that I'm involved in. So that's what this little window out of the box is providing. Now then we have some really nice performance indices and charts. So a little bit of visual cues. So it's giving me a list of projects in the portfolio, and the portfolios can be built using filters, using the EPS structure, OBS structure, things of that nature. But usually you're using project codes to get them into a grouping or into a portfolio. And what we're seeing is whether or not we've got some problems with dates. So we're late as of today, and compared to the forecast at completion. So what we're forecasting still to be left, what's going on. Okay, so these are really handy, and they're using the data inside of the P6 project itself. Okay, so the activities are being rolled out to create these. And we're using a very simple graphical, the four graphical features that we have also in the user-defined fields. Okay. So that's schedule performance. We have the indices. So the schedule performance indexes, the cost performance index, and the to complete performance index. These are also being rolled up and provided visually in these out-of-the-box portlets that we have available. We also have a simplified Gantt that's available. Okay, so it gives you a Gantt chart, gives you a little bit of control here on how we're looking at the data, and gives you a bit of a simplified Gantt that you can also look at and share. Okay, probably take a screen grab of it and share out if you want. So those are all out of the box pieces. We also have a health portlet, which explains kind of where each of the projects is at. Okay, so that also can be a handy one that you can share out. Or if people are given access to P6 Web, they can self-serve and see them directly as well. So that's the dashboard. Now, the good thing is these are a lot of the ones that I just showed you, pretty much all of them, they're out of the box. The bad thing is the people who need to see them may not be P6 users. Okay, so that's where some of our clients have been looking into getting data out, and our P6 Reporter is the tool that we sell that helps you get the data out, and then you can take those elements and put them in your standard corporate dashboard. Okay, so there's other ways to get the data out, and if that's something your team is interested in, I would definitely recommend that you join one of our P6 Reporter webinars. Okay, so more and more, because the users that need to see this stuff are not P6 users, we're finding that clients are pushing the data out. Okay, so you've got you can mix and match is what I'm trying to highlight there. Now, what I'm using is a portfolio. So you can see I've got this portfolio available, and I may have many others. Okay, and portfolios are usually built by using filters. Okay, so you can see here we have a few in our demo database for our different software tools, and it's filtering certain projects that meet the criteria. Okay, so normally you'd have different ones in your organization, perhaps by the department, perhaps by geographical area. Depending on your role, it could be for each client that you're servicing. Okay, so many different ways to create portfolios, but they're basically normally using filters with project codes. So I'll show you that, and there's other things we can do with portfolios. So this is, I'll come right back to this. This is the this is going to be some resource planning, resource analysis based on portfolios. So this is data that's very handy in P6 Web. Okay, so we can create different portfolios very simply here. Okay, and I'll show you the one that I'm using right now. So we have code. It's a project level code that we're using, and it's a very simple portfolio filter here. And I've tagged the projects I want to show you with a code called P6 EPPM. So that's a very simple one. Now, if I wanted to make another one, very easy. They can be they can be shared with others. Okay, so multiple users, or they can be made global, meaning anyone can access them. Okay, so when you're creating portfolios, you can either choose hard selections. I can just grab a handful of projects. So in this case, it's a manual grab. It's not dynamic. So if I need to add projects to this portfolio, I'd have to remember to come in and do that. Okay, so this is a manual creation. If I prefer to use a filter, I can use the filtering functionality. And then I can use a variety of different things. So I think I have one called Project Manager. Yeah, Demo PM, I think, will work. And then I can go and pick all the projects that this particular PM, so this fellow Adam Ed, is in charge of. Now I can put additional criteria, okay? So perhaps I have an area, a geographical area that's important to me. So I can do that, okay? So I can do lots of different things in creating a portfolio. No, not a problem. So I'm just gonna make it simple and just do the PM one. And let me just give it a name so I remember what this is. And off you go. It will go ahead and save it. And whoops, what's it doing? Let me just see. It's interesting. Looks like my window is not responding. Let me just see. Let me just see if I close it, whether it's done it or not. It does seem strange what it's doing. Doesn't seem to be responding. Let me just see if it created it. Okay, yeah, looks like it did. Okay, it just didn't give any messaging. So then you could take that and you can actually use that portfolio and change what you're looking at. Okay, so it's very easy to add portfolios. In that example, I did a filter using a code, but you could also do a look ahead. So give me those that are starting in the next few months, finishing in the next few months. Give me a portfolio of projects that are in jeopardy, and that could be with an overrun, a variance. So you can do a lot of different things in this window with portfolios. Now, once you've got a portfolio, you can use it here in the capacity planning. You can use it in the dashboard, as I showed you earlier. You can use it in a variety of different places inside of P6 Web. So let's take a look at this capacity planning. So this is trying to show you what's going on with your resource pool. So your resource pool in P6 is made up of resources and roles. And resources usually can fulfill roles. Now in P6 in the web, we also have the idea of teams. So we can create resource teams and we can create role teams. Whoops, sorry about that. Oops, sorry about that, guys. I should have turned that off. The other idea here is the teams can be used to group however you wish. So it gives you an additional way of grouping data elements that we don't have in the client, okay? So the concept of teams is purely a web function. So let me try and explain what you're looking at. So let me just give a little bit more room to this. So what we're looking at is our different resources that have been assigned to any of the projects in this particular portfolio. And I'm seeing the color coding for those resources. Now, as we work on this, we have many different years that we can look at. So this particular one is back in 2007, 2008, 2009. So we can scroll through and we can control the granularity. In this case, I've made it very summarized. So it's a quarter and yearly. But if you want to get more detail, you certainly can jump into more detail, okay? So you can look at it in many different ways. And so just by changing the scale that you're looking at. So this is very handy when you're trying to understand, do I have these big peaks and valleys, which of course is not good because you want to keep your team busy. So you want to definitely be looking at what your resource planning is looking like, okay? So that is super handy in the web. It's more dynamic, I find, than what we can do in the client. So this is one of the pieces I feel is quite strong in P6 Web when you're looking at the resource pool. Okay, it's just a little easier. They've got better graphics. So this could be something that you can explore if you haven't tried exploring it yet in the web. It's definitely something that's worth looking at. Now, when you're looking at these, you can group these in different ways. We can do different kind of charts. We've got an availability chart, which is an interesting one. So it will actually, we'll try and show you whether you're, sorry, let me get that out of there, whether you're under. So you see this is going under the 0 line. So it means I've got too much work for my team in that particular period. And it's showing you the colors of those that are in jeopardy, meaning there's too much work for them. Okay. So that's a good one to use. And we can look at this data in different ways. So if we prefer to look at a spreadsheet model, we can look at it that way. Very simple, just to flip between these. So I was looking at a stacked histogram. It's a pretty common way for people to look at. And then I can certainly uncheck all of these. You can see I've got a lot of resources on here, so it can be a bit overwhelming. And so there's lots of different ways that you can look at this data. Okay, so that's a very handy one. The capacity planning is a good one. So let me move over to projects, and let's start with the EPS. So the EPS is the enterprise project structure. If you're using P6 client, it's the same thing that you use in the client to organize the data. So it's this when you're in the project window, you've got the same sort of grouping usually. Okay, now of course you can group by project codes as well, but often people look at their list of projects by EPS. So it's the same idea. I'll just give it a bit more real estate here, and I can navigate in to the EPS nodes by popping them open. Okay, now something that I really like in the web is the way that it searches. The way that it searches is awesome, and I really wish it was in the client, because I can do an on-screen filter very easily with this search. So in this case, I search P6, so it just keeps, in this case, projects and EPS nodes that match that criteria. Okay, so I really love that in the web. That makes it really easy, especially if you have a strong naming convention. Okay, and I'm a big believer of tagging and bagging and naming things in a very organized manner. Okay, now this is one of the benefits of doing that, is it makes things like searching, filtering, sorting much better by having that nice consistent standard in place. So let me explain to you what we're looking at. So we're looking at the different projects, and they're organized in their EPS structure. So that could be by geographical area, it could be by the type of project, it could be by the stage of the project. So some of our clients have all their bid projects together, then all their awarded projects together, all their closed projects or in commissioning together. So lots of different ways to organize this. And you can then work with multiple projects at any given time. Okay, so similar to P6 client, we have the ability to open and close the details window. So it's just using this little widget here on the side to pop this open or close. So that's very handy. And the tabs are organized in a similar way, not exactly the same. They've tried to reduce the number of tabs, which I think is a good thing. So it's not exactly the same as what we have in the client, but it's still quite usable, very easy to learn and understand. So project codes is a big one. So for those of you who don't use P6 or are new to the idea of P6, the idea of coding and user-defined fields is a one of the big power engines of P6. We're able to enhance the database by adding a variety of things. So codes are pick lists. So earlier we were looking at the project manager. It was actually the Adam Ant fellow here. Okay, that was the one that I used to create that on-the-fly portfolio. So this is a pick list. So it helps make sure that it's standard, it's consistent, and that we're not, typing people's names incorrectly. So I happen to be an administrator, so I have the ability not only to choose one of these, but if I needed to, I could create a new one. Okay, so I could create one, and I'll just create one for Ian. Oops, it might help if I type his name right. And so I can create it. Okay, now not everyone would have the ability to do that. And then I could assign it to Ian. Now, again, in here, the thing I really love in here is the searching again. So if I wanted to search, because the list is very long, like say you have an equipment list, for example, on the activities, it can be quite a chore to work through something like that. So the searching is very nice in here. Okay, now we do have searching and coding in the client, but again, in the web, I think the searching is very strong. So we also have user-defined fields. So we have the ability to add additional fields to P6. Now this is both true in the client as well as in the web. And the types of fields vary. So you can see we have a bunch of indicators. And this is our P6 QA. So you can see we got a lot of indicators there. We also have the ability to have cost fields, so additional cost fields. And for those of you who registered for my P6 calculator webinar that I keep bumping, but it won't be bumped again, it's all ready to go. I'll show you how you can handle a lot of additional costing. We can have dates, we can have numbers, we can have start dates, text fields, and integers, okay? So this is also a huge benefit with P6, both web and client. So I just wanted to show you how it looks in the client. And then we have notebooks. We have additional things like funding and issues and risks and so on. So the notebooks in the web, they look like this. And I don't know if it's my browser, but I can't get this whole notebook. So the thing that's handy about these notebooks is you can actually copy and paste these out very readily. So this is our QA notebook, just as an example. And I can actually copy and paste that out into Word. And then you can share this from Word. Okay, so there's a lot of nice things that you can do in notebooks. This is just one example of how you can manage the notebooks and make them more usable and share them out. You can also put them in reports and things like that, but I just wanted to show you how the notebook varies a little bit in the web. Okay, now let's get into some meat here. Let's get into actually working with these projects. It's got something it doesn't like there. I'll just go ahead and cancel whatever I did. Yeah, I'll cancel those changes. Okay, so let's take a look at how these windows work. So every one of these windows, so I'm on the project, are pretty similar. So we have the table area here on the left, and then we have a Gantt area or a spreadsheet area generally on the right. So very much like the client. And it's a split screen, so I can control the real estate and what I'm seeing in either one of them. Now, I can, let me go ahead and give a bit more room to the grid, to the table area. So the table area inside of here is can be quite expansive. So you can see I've got a lot of different columns here that I'm working with, and I can control those. So this little customize view icon is where I do all my layout development, or it's called a view in the web, but it's similar to a layout. So this is very nice, actually, the way that this works. It's quite, it's easy to learn. It's easy to learn and coach a new user because you don't have so many icons. You don't have an icon for columns and a different one for grouping and a different one for filtering and sorting. It's all organized in one place. So that makes it quite handy in terms of coaching a new user. Now, again, we have this great filtering, searching in here. So if I was looking for baseline information, I just need to know a few tricks, and baselines are abbreviated to BL. And then I get all the BL fields filtered down. So that's really nice. Makes it easier for someone who's trying to figure out all these fields and where they are. Okay. So the searching, again, is really, really powerful inside of the web. Now, something to note. So if you're used to working in client, we can put a heck of a lot of columns on the screen. In the web, there is a limit. Now, I'm not sure exact numbers. I think it's about 25 to 35 columns. So it's still reasonably big, but you might find that you can't put as many columns, which is the case, okay? But you can still put quite a few. So it's still quite powerful there. So I already have baseline start, finish, dates, baseline labor, planned labor. So I can do some comparisons here. That's what the objective of this particular layout is. And you can see here the layouts. I have the ability to create many that are shared, so they're global. And I can share some to just certain users, or again, same thing I saw earlier, I can have them just for myself. Now, filtering, pretty similar to what I showed you in the portfolios, but we have some out-of-the-box filtering components, and then I can create more filtering components. And I can see those filters here, and if I want to edit them, I can go in and I can do edits inside of here, okay? So again, I can have multiple criteria inside of the filtering. So whoops, I probably went a little too far. And then I have my grouping and sorting. So I'm grouping currently by EPS, but I can group by codes, etc. inside of here. And I'll probably do a bit more of that in the actual activities, okay? Just so you can get an idea of it. Now, in terms of color coding, we do have a few predefined color coding in here, so we don't have quite as much flexibility. But if you wanted to do some of your corporate colors, you can actually create some custom colors and custom sort of themes, if you will. Okay, so you do have that ability in here as well. Okay, so not quite as flexible as the client, but still can be quite good. And I can go back, and then you can see some of the custom coloring can come into play inside of here. Okay. Okay, so let's jump into the meat of it, where we're really building projects, and we're looking at activities with their work breakdowns. We're looking at the resourcing, etc. So if you're used to using P6 Client, okay, you would open one or many projects, and you would use this activities tab is how you would do it. Okay, so it's a similar, but it's not exactly the same, but it's similar. Okay, so it's like going into the activity window, what I'm doing here. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this. And I think I'm going to give a full view here so we can just use the real estate a little bit better. So now I've got a layout, I've got a view. This is my P6 QA layout. So if you have user fields, so these are user fields, you can see those inside of here. So very similar to what I was showing you a minute ago, you can use the little customized view to control what you're looking at. Now, inside of P6 Web, we have, again, the details tab on the bottom. Okay, so you can just pop this open or close it, depending on what you're trying to work on. We have the ability to create an activity, to give it a duration. So how long is it? This particular one is 20 days long. It's got some labor on it, and it could have non-labor. It could have materials. Okay, we don't have the widget here for material units, but we have the widget for material costs. Okay, so that's very much like what you've got in P6 Client, and the roll-up is coming from the assignments window. So that's where we do all our resourcing. So if we have an activity and we need some resources to actually perform that work, we can use this here to do an assignment. Now, when you come into assigning, again, we have the ability to search. So I might actually need some equipment on this particular one. It's engineering, so it's probably not really an equipment one, but perhaps the construction of it would be more appropriate. Okay, so some of the earthworks here, so construction ones, can have equipment and materials. So you can search these, you can assign them, and that will start to produce your requirements, your requirement histogram. The other thing that we have inside of P6 is also expenses. So if you're doing some cost management, and probably about 30% of the users, maybe 30 to 40% of the users do some costing in P6. I would say, 100% use it for scheduling, and then 70 to 80 use resources, and then lesser numbers use costing. But if you do want to use some costing, you may have expenses as well as resources that contribute to the costing on the project. So we would do that down in the expense window. Now, I mentioned codes earlier. Now, those were project codes. So these are codings that apply to the activities. So you might have a discipline code. You might have a crew that's going to perform the work. You might have a variety of different things, like the work package it's involved in. So work package is a good one. Now, currently I'm looking at this layout by WBS. So this work package is probably a very good one for us to try to rearrange this. Okay, so I'm going to do that, but I'm going to flip first to a Gantt chart view. Okay, so I have multiple views. I can switch to any of the views at any time. And this one is a Gantt chart view. Okay, so again, I can squeeze this up, get a bit more real estate. And this Gantt chart is looking at the current schedule against the baseline. Okay, so this is a demo database, so we don't update it very often. Hopefully your projects don't look like this, where you're 3 years late and you're way longer in terms of the activity. So you can see it, the baseline in here, and that's controlled in the same area, the same widget. All the controls are in that, so it's really easy to learn how to use it as a result. So let me go ahead and jump in, and let's actually use that work package as a grouping. Okay, so instead of grouping by WBS, let me go ahead and use the work package. I just want to make sure it's the right thing. Let's try it. I'm not 100% sure this is the right thing. Work package name. No, this is not. That's what I was thinking. Let me just go back and check it again. Sorry, guys. Would you like to see if this changes? No. Let me just get it correct here. EAI work package. Okay, that's what I'm looking for. So let me do that. And let's group. And I'm just going to change that. So let's see. EAI. And there it is. That's the one I was looking for. So let's group by the work package. So instead of looking at this by WBS, we're going to get it to flip and group by a different code. Now, if I like that, and if that's one I want to use regularly, all I need to do is make a new layout, okay, and label it appropriately so I can reuse it very easily, okay? So let me go ahead and apply that, and I can get out of this window. And there you go, it's switched this. So now it's grouping all of the work package activities together. Okay, so now I can see those very, very clearly. And they're organized by the engineering, the construction, fabrication, commissioning, startup. Okay, so nice sort of chronological order to it. Okay, so that's a nice, good example of strong coding, nice, clean naming convention. That's the way you want to have it. And then it's grouped all the project controls activities in one. Okay, so I've got multiple projects in here. So that's why you might see a bit of repetition. So I could also group by 2 layers. So I could group by project and then by work package. So you've got multiple ways to do grouping. So very similar to what you're used to in the client, but just a slightly different look and feel, and a very handy way to look at the data. If I want to save this, I can. If I don't want to, I can just cancel that save. So it's trying to get me to save this layout if I like it. Now, I can also look at the Gantt, the network diagram, so the logic diagram. So this is something I actually find is quite handy in the web. Okay, so I find this is a nice view to be able to see this. In some ways, I like it better than what we have in the client. So this is another area you might want to explore. And you can see the different activities in here. You also have the trace logic on the specific activity, and then it shows you just a zoom in of what's coming before it, what's coming after it. Okay, so I find this can be quite good in the web and very user-friendly. Okay, so that's something you might want to explore if you haven't explored the web very much. Now, let's just do this. Okay, so I'm going to flip back to the Gantt. Now we also have the ability to rearrange the Gantt chart as well. So we have a few settings right here, just a few, including the time scale, which you saw me look at in the other resource histogram. Okay, so we can switch the time scale. We could also shrink it as you saw. We can move it around. So that can be very handy if you want to screen grab it, if you want to print it. The controls are there and available to you there. Now, another thing that we definitely use quite often, so I just got out of full screen view, is to look at the resourcing on the projects that I've got open. Now, in my case, I have a handful of projects. You might look at one project at a time. So it's just bugging me because I didn't save this view. And so I'm okay with leaving this and not saving it. But that's a handy thing. It does remind you, and earlier you saw it was telling me I had an error, I hadn't filled something in. So it does give you those messages to remind you to do things correctly. So the resourcing is a huge part of what P6 is very strong on. We have a resource pool that can be across the whole enterprise. So it gives you the ability to share resources and assign them to your project appropriately. Now, of course, you want to be able to see whether or not you have any problems. A problem would be an over allocation. So this is an example where it's trying to let you know that we have some over allocated resources in this project, this RE2 project. Now, if I have over allocations, the chance of me being able to get the work done goes down, okay? Especially if it's a big over allocation, which this looks like it's a crazy number in a given quarter. So I can dig in to this to try and see, okay, well, where is this over allocation? What's causing it? How can I solve it? So P6 won't solve that problem for you automatically. I'm just going to, again, give a bit more real estate. It won't solve it automatically, but it will highlight it for you so that you and the management team can work on trying to figure out how you're going to deal with that, okay? Overtime may not cut it and could incur additional costs. So you need to be thinking about what are your choices when you've got an over allocation. So this is letting me know that in 2022, in this quarter, I've got some over allocations. I've got some in 2024, in Q4 and Q1. So this, I've got a few months in a row, okay? So this works really nicely. It highlights it very clearly, and then it gives you the diagram that goes along with it so you can get a better understanding. And you still have to solve the problem. You can try and use resource leveling. So P6 has resource leveling where it tries to rearrange where the activities are sitting to try and get under this limit that we've told it. Okay, so this is saying that I've got 520 hours a quarter for this particular resource, and we're over that. Okay, so in this case, I'm over by 238 hours in this quarter. Now, this one is a huge over allocation. So this one is even more worrisome, of course, and you can see that on the histograms. Okay, so that's a very strong part of P6 Web. So the resource visuals are very good in the web. So if you haven't explored them, they are worth taking a closer look at. And you can look at them by resource as well as by role, okay? So those are both options. And if I want to understand my costs rather than my units, so I can look at costs, and the graphic is changing based on my choices up here. Okay, so very easy to work with, very handy. Now, if I prefer to look at things in more of a tabular format related to resources, I can do that as well. So that's really this assignment area. So the usage has the graphics. The assignment is much more of a tabular view, and you can look at it this way. Now, there are some limits inside of here. So you can't open all the projects, all the resources potentially if you've got huge database. So you might find a little bit of limits. So you're going to have to use a bit of filtering inside of here. So in this example, I've just filtered on that civil engineering, and this gives me the detail of every activity, every project that they're assigned to, okay? Now, in these windows, we do have the ability to download these things out to Excel, okay? So that can be handy if you're trying to understand the data a little bit more. Again, if you're trying to graph the data, I think you should definitely explore the P6 Reporter webinars and look at that, graphing out to your different dashboarding, okay? So you do have the capability of downloading all over the place inside the web. So this little download button, you've probably seen it on many of the screens. So within the web, and within the client too, these things exist in both. We also have issues, okay? So this is something that's not used by many of my clients anyway. So we do have the ability to tag issues at the project and we can tag issues at the activity level. Okay, so and we can add additional fields to issues. So I can add user-defined fields to issues, and I can use those on the screen. So this is definitely an area that could be used more, I would say, inside of P6. So in this example, I've got some little check marks. Again, those for flags that we have available. So this can be used in a way inside of P6, and then again, the issues can be pushed out to through P6 Reporter out to a Power BI, for example. Okay, so those can go into these sort of dashboarding tools if you want to share them out. Okay, so those are things that you can definitely explore. That's not exclusive to the web, it's also in the client, but in the web it's quite handy the way that it works. They're rolled out based on the projects open. So it's a nice window. We also have something similar in the web available. Okay, let's just see what else. We have just a few minutes left, so let me just see what else I didn't cover. Okay, so then we also have the ability to look at the resources I mentioned in these resource teams. We also have role teams. So we can create those teams, and those are administered in the web. So inside of here, so I'll show them that in a second. So we can create a team, and then in this case, you can see it's a civil engineering team. So it lets me do a sort of a stacked grouping of their workload very readily, okay? And then now instead of looking at it just one by one, I'm merging them together, because these could be a group that share work, or that I could divvy the work up a little bit more differently than just giving it all to one group in here. You might have your internal team, and you might be able to outsource to a third-party vendor. Okay, so this could be a vendor in this example, and these are your internal folks. So this is something that can be quite handy. That's not quite as easy to do in P6 clients. So this can be quite handy. You can do a little bit of it with a code, some coding that we, especially in the later versions, they added additional coding to the roles, also to the resource assignments. And then you can do some different plotting. Okay, so this can be very handy, and the idea of a resource team and a role team might be valuable to you. And you may not have known that that's inside of the tool. Okay, so those can be a few different areas to take a peek at and get familiar with that are available out here in the web piece. Okay, now I haven't been looking to see if any questions are coming through, so let's take a peek and see if there are. Okay, so far I don't see any. All right. Okay, well, let me wrap up. If you have any questions before I jump out of the screen, go ahead and throw them in the question room. And then if you want me to show you something particular that I might have missed that you were interested in exploring, I'll jump in and show it. Okay, nothing yet. Okay, let me just do one more thing. So some of you may be using Team Member. So Team Member is Oracle's updating tool. It's a web-based tool as well. And you can do timesheets as well as updates in it. Okay, so if you use that tool, or if you're interested in updating tools, definitely reach out, because we've got not only Team Member, we've got some that we've also built. This is how you would do some approvals for the updates. Okay, so that's what this little approval window lets you do. And then we also have the ability to deploy Power BI, not Power BI, sorry, BI Publisher reports inside of the web. So that's what this tab would give us access to. So if you want additional reporting beyond what you can do in client, that might be something worth exploring, okay? Because you can put graphics as well as tabular components in it. Okay, so they would be run from inside of here. Okay, so I see a question. Is all the projects and related data in P6 Web is what has been created in P6 Client? Okay, it might be what, let me explain that again. So we can make data from client. You can also make data from web. You can do both. And the database is shared in the back end. So what I'm seeing inside of here can be built in both places, okay? There are a few things I just mentioned that are purely built in web, but yes, it is a shared database. So you can mix and match. You might give some of your team the client, you could give some of your team the web, okay? And it's all going into the same shared database. Okay, any other questions? Okay, none right now. Okay, so that's fine. So I will jump back to the PowerPoint and we'll wrap it up. Okay, so we took a look. I think I've highlighted some of the different benefits that that our clients get when they're using the web. Again, I have some that use it, but still quite a few are using mostly client. But the resource components are quite nice. The searching capability, the ease of use is very nice inside of here. So if you want to deploy to your project management team, for example, so they can look at the Gantt, you may not want them to edit, so you can give a read-only capability, and then they can look at some Gantts. You can have some pre-existing layouts, so that can be very handy inside of the P6 Web. So then it's a little lighter, it's a little bit of an easier user interface. And if they're not doing a lot of heavy duty scheduling, then I think that works very well. Okay, I think I've shown you what I wanted to. So I want to thank you for spending the last hour with us. Hopefully you saw something of interest, and if there is something you want to explore a bit more, just let me know. Okay, another quick question here. Do we have XCR Excel import ability in P6 Web as we have in Client? Not exactly. So let me show you, let me go back and let me show you how that works. Okay, so we have some importing, yes, and some, it's different though. The importing is, let me go to the project level and show you from there. So the importing and exporting in the web is not XER, it's XML, okay? So we have import and export, and you can see here it's XML. It's Primavera XML or Microsoft Project XML. And then you would, choose the file and you can bring it in. So it is different. Now, let me just, let me just do one more thing here, just to try and show that a bit more thoroughly. So that was importing. Exporting is the same. You can see here the exporting is XML, not XER. Okay, so XER is purely a client facing approach. Now we do have some exporting into Excel and some importing from Excel, but it's not that broad-based. And that is why Emerald built the P6 Loader tool, to give you very, very dynamic, very wide-based importing and exporting with Excel. Okay, so if you need a lot of that, you might want to explore that webinar. Okay, it just depends on how much you need. Okay, but we do have the ability to export, and I'll just show you, because the exporting is quite good inside of here for the project level. So we can do more than one export, and we have the added benefit of being able to do the baselines. So this is a big benefit to the XCR. We don't have as much control. Now, the downside is it's going to make more than one project. And if you want to do a lot of different project work with baselines and activities, then that's where the loader has an advantage. Okay, so it really depends on your needs. And then you can run the export. And it uses the job services to run those exports. Once it's done, it lets you know up here that your export is finished, and then you can download it. Okay, so the key thing here is this is XML, and Excel is what we have available. Okay. Okay. Excellent. So I think I've gone through what I wanted to. Definitely take a look at some of our other upcoming webinars. I've mentioned a few of the tools because we have a very broad-based toolkit that we've built over many years, and really to fill gaps that really save a lot of time with these tools so that you don't have to struggle with them. So if you're interested in a lot of importing, exporting, definitely look at the loader. If you want more graphical tools that are used across non-P6 users, take a look at our reporter tools webinar. And if you want more updating capability, look at Team Member, look at our TAPS and CAPS tool and P6 Loader. Those are strong updating tools. And I will have that P6 Calculator webinar next week. So that's our tool that lets you add a lot of features and functions inside a P6. Okay, great. Now, in terms of, whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to skip that slide. Sorry, guys. Whoops, misbehaving here. I was just trying to share my email address. If you do want to reach out, if you have any questions, definitely reach out. And also, if you want us to follow up in any particular way, just go ahead and fill out this quick question, and then that way we know how to stay in contact if there's anything you want to explore about this tool or any of the others that I mentioned in this webinar. Okay, great. So I think I'll stop the recording.